looking over your stuff, Josh, I was kind of trying to figure out the right way to work on like how we talk about you being a food consultant, and as particularly with like the meat and poultry stuff. My first question was like, when you walk into a new plant, what's like the first thing you look for in your role as a consultant?
That's a tough question because the reason or purpose that I might be on site anywhere varies differently. So I mean,
Yeah,
providing services for very small and smaller operators, it tends to be a lot more of the regulatory support, the food safety system development and implementation. Where if it's a larger operator where they have their own individuals to kind of take the lead on those things, it's going in and doing a lot more focused or niche support or technical support, maybe along the lines of microbial troubleshooting or problem solving like quality or yield issues. So I think it definitely varies, but with smaller operators, which tends to be the larger number of groups that I work with, it's really just getting a sense for whether or not their space is set up to produce safe and wholesome food, kind of that
yeah,
fundamental foundation of food processing and food safety. Do they have the space equipped to produce safe and wholesome food? So obviously, that's a visual observation of their equipment, their infrastructure,
yeah.
kind of their minimum PPE for food handling. So, yeah, I guess those would be kind of those initial observations that I'm looking for.
Does it change for you, Josh, if you're going into like a say a brand new small plant compared to an old plant? Like, how does your mind work on in that way of like if something's been established for a few decades compared to something that might have just been put up?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you can imagine, with some of these groups that maybe operate or have historically operated as a custom shop, just providing those services for slaughter and processing for local producers to provide those products to those producers or to individuals that maybe buy the animals directly from the producers. Those shops could be, in some cases, decades, if not like multi-generational pieces of infrastructure that are really not necessarily run down, but they're just aged
Yeah.
as
They've had
compared
a
to a
lot of
state.
pieces added to it like over the
Yeah,
years.
absolutely. So so
Yeah.
so that transition reflected in renovations or additions that have kind of evolved as the business has evolved is much different than a facility that's intentionally built for the purpose of food processing in kind of like the 20th century. So um, much different challenges from an older establishment to a brand new intentionally built establishment. So obviously there's an opportunity to go in and work with what you got, provide some of those procedural or um, kind of like written policies for how you accommodate challenges with an old facility, as
Yeah.
opposed to maybe being part of the conversation for a new built facility as to what are the materials, the best materials to use, or the sanitation or processing considerations with the use of materials or design of a facility. So, yes, much different conversations if it's old and existing as opposed to the opportunity to intentionally build something with all of those kind of food processing, food safety considerations in mind.
Yeah. Um, I wanted to talk a little bit about, I'm going through my questions now. This is why it's good that we can just settle in. I tried not to give too many like hard ones right off the bat. So, um, take me through like when you're looking at, since you're mainly focused on smaller plants, how they like keep up with maintaining the standards of food safety and, they've got a lot of different challenges that they're working with on a day-to-day basis.
Sure. So different than your larger operators where you're going to have individuals designated with different responsibilities, tasks, et cetera. You scale down to those smaller operators and they are a jack of all trades. They wear every hat. They're the owner, manager, they're the accountant, they are the processor, they're the individual responsible for food safety. They may be the delivery driver, they're the customer service rep. They're all of these things. So it definitely stretches them thinner in a lot of directions. And with respect to food safety and regulatory compliance, there's definitely a technical complexity to it that the smaller operators, not that they don't have the capacities to familiarize themselves and be competent and capable, but when you're all of these other things and food safety is as complex and nuanced as it can be, I can come in and provide a very focused service and kind of alleviate that stress or strain from them. So I'm able to come in and be that that advocate, that authority to ensure that they've got the programs that set them up for success, and then all they've got to worry about is implementing them. And then whenever there's an interaction with a regulatory body, FDA, USDA, state, I can help defend their food safety plans with the assumption that they're able to simply implement them. I kind of support the science, the regulations, the organization of those types of systems.
Yeah. And you know, from your perspective and what you've learned over the years, what's the best way that a processor, if they're starting from square one, should prepare for anything they see from FSIS or from a state inspection?
That's a tough question because it differs so much from a
Yeah,
group doing slaughter versus salami. Obviously, the regulations are constantly evolving or changing as a result of public health impact, headlines. So, like Listeria, with on the back end of some of these larger processors that have had ready to eat incidences in the past year. So, obviously staying connected through the different networks that exist, be it the American Association of Meat Processors, the North American Meat Institute, now the Meat Institute, um, or some of these more regional or local trade groups so like AMP has a bunch of state affiliated groups. All of those are great networks to stay involved in and
yeah,
informed. Mailers or newsletters going out from Meat and Poultry or Meeting Place, any of these other kind of content source um, sites or mailers are all really good. And honestly, if internally you don't have the time or personnel to manage those things, maintaining a relationship with a technical authority like someone like myself that can
yeah,
be that advocate that like I know within my portfolio of relationships that I maintain um who does what, and if a specific regulation comes out or revision in how USDA or FSIS might do their inspection, I can reach out to those groups and inform them as to what's coming down the barrel, what they should anticipate or prepare for. And some choose to be actionable or kind of do take preemptive control of those types of scenarios. Other ones wait till they have to do it. And it just
yeah,
has to, it depends on the scope of that business, how they choose to prioritize funds, responsibilities, et cetera. So any of those are all great resources to.
yeah. You mentioned earlier about the ready to eat and listeria stuff that's kind of been coming up the last year. Has that area for you specifically kind of been the biggest compliance challenge that you've been looking at? Is what else has kind of been on your radar throughout the year?
Yeah, so I'd say there's always a consistent opportunity to help operators, whether they're new to meat processing or have been doing custom, make that transition to USDA FSI's inspection. It affords them wholesale and interstate commerce. It lets their business grow in some different ways that custom obviously limits them. So that's always a consistent opportunity to provide support with. For your larger operators or really anybody doing ready to eat, Listeria, um, there's kind of a twofold opportunity in a consulting capacity for Listeria where there can be a lot of preventive measures that or support that could be provided, whether it's designing, intentionally designing or uh, handling products that are ready to eat in a manner that you're preventing potential listeria or public health incidences, or reactionary, where in the event that a group has an ongoing listeria issue, should it end up as an enforcement action or not, we can go in and provide some of that troubleshooting to right the ship and put them in a position that where they're responding to FSI's enforcement actions, or we are troubleshooting and trying to find that listeria and manage it with a number of different potential hurdles or interventions.
Yeah. And it's not just listeria. I mean, you're looking for salmonella stuff always out there looking for anything that comes out there that from the poultry side too.
Yeah, yeah. So certainly, like I said again, like slaughter to salami, the regs vary
Yeah,
from
for
that
sure.
across that spectrum. So the challenges for one operator to another are going to be vastly different.
For sure. Josh, anything new on the regulatory or scientific side that you've seen like the last year or two that's kind of piqued your interest? I mean, it might not be applicable yet, but it might be something somebody's studying that you really liked.
I mean, I make an attempt to keep on top of the science, especially as it relates to how they could ease or create efficiencies to regulatory compliance. My master's and PhD, my grad research all focused on kind of these food safety interventions, be it to the product or to the processing environment in general. So I always think it's interesting to consider the different um, product specific interventions or facility sanitation interventions. I think we live in a time and an age where any more a combination of hurdles tends to be the silver bullets as opposed to
Yeah.
thinking there's going to be a one intervention solves the problem type of approach. So yeah, I think there's a lot of novel sanitation interventions and chemistries that are interesting. I also think the integration for the groups that can justify the expenses in robotics and artificial intelligence is very fascinating. I think we're going to see a very rapid transition for those that can justify the investments to some more of these autonomous robotic AI-driven systems, which obviously from a technical perspective is very fascinating to kind of see how that blends with food safety and product quality, et cetera.